All right, I'm going to start now. So welcome to this session called Workplace Best Practices for Designing Spectacular Conference Rooms. I know it's a long title, but I thought every word deserved to be up there. My name is Esther Yoon. I am the product marketer for Conference Room Solutions. I actually go by Zoom Rooms Queen as well. Queen Esther kind of works. And I'm really excited to have this session because we've heard a lot of people deploy Zoom Rooms, but when you're deploying a conference room, we think it's really important that everyone understand all the different factors that contribute to a great conference room experience, right? It's not just about the technology, it's about the entire environment, right? And that affects the near-end experience as well as the far-end experience. And so I've asked two experts here to join me on stage. We have John Schramm from Herman Miller and Gino Zahari from Logitech to talk about the different aspects of building a conference room experience that's really awesome. So before we go in, I kind of want to have them introduce themselves to tell you guys why they're qualified to talk to you. John, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm John Schramm. I'm with Herman Miller. I'm a workplace designer there, so my background's in interiors and architecture. And I've been outfitting corporate interiors here in San Francisco, the Bay Area, and New York. So,
cool. My name is Gino Zahari. I'm a global alliance manager. I work with Logitech and actually manage the partnership with Zoom. So I get to work really closely with the Zoom initiatives that are in place from a kind of an AV or technology perspective. We also have a relationship with Herman Miller. We work really closely with them on workplace design. So we're able to kind of see the forward future of what workspaces should be or how they can be helpful for our collaboration efforts. So.
Awesome. Yeah. So I do want to start off by asking our guest speakers, what and kind of explain to you guys, their philosophy behind what makes a great conference room experience. I think that's a great way to set the tone. So John, do you want to just kind of go and explain?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I'm part of the applied placemaking team at Herman Miller. So my team all have backgrounds in design, architecture, interior. So we're not salespeople. We're really trying to figure out solutions for you guys. So try to align, our tagline is aligning people, technology, and the workplace. So we wanted to understand who you guys are as corporations, how you work, how your different teams work, if you're remote or you have distributed campuses. So we wanted to kind of get all that data and information about you because one size of conference room does not fit all. So there's dozens of ways you can kind of outfit a conference room, and these are just some of the kind of few different examples. So we really try to get into the nitty-gritty of who you guys are, how you work, and the tools and technologies that you have. So we're thinking about the surroundings, the rooms, the furnishings, the lighting, and then also the technology, and how all those combine and interact with each other. Because we know that what might work for you won't work for someone else, or different teams have different styles of working. So these are just various of different conference rooms for creative rooms, or just straight up presentations or a little bit of workshopping, and I'll kind of go through a few of these in a little bit of detail so we can kind of talk about the different things that go into a well-designed conference room. So this one is a fairly straightforward conference room. It's meant for perhaps sharing information. There's a presenter at the front of the room. So there's a kind of clearance around the front of the table and along the sides, so you have access both to the screen, the display, and also the whiteboards. We expect people to sit here for 1 to 2 hours. So the chairs at the table are kind of a comfortable seat. It's soft seating, so you can kind of be relaxed and comfortable for that meeting space. There's also a taller table in the back, so that when you're presenting, there's going to be different eye lines, so everyone can look at the screen and then no one's blocking each other's view. It also gives you a good opportunity, if you need to take a phone call, you can kind of quickly hop out of the room and kind of quickly touch back. This table also has a specific little kind of shelf there so that you can put your phone down or store your laptop. We're always thinking about being present in a meeting. So if you can kind of put your phone away, you can kind of charge in that little shelf, and then you're kind of paying attention to the display up front. We're also looking at the acoustical panels in the back. We're always thinking about sound. So anytime you can introduce soft materials, like those acoustical panels on the back, the carpet on the floor, that helps to alleviate sound and vibrations. So what else? Let's see. This is a different type of conference room. It's a little smaller, but maybe this is more geared to a collaborative team, right? 2 to 4 people coming in, they need to brainstorm, come up with a plan. So there's a interactive screen where you can kind of take notes up front. All the furniture is lightweight and movable so that you can bring a laptop here, you can bring your notebook and sketchbook. They also easily tuck under that shelf in the back. So if you need to just kind of clear out the room, everything has a place. There's no centralized table to get in your way. Everything's kind of mobile and flexible. It also shows one of our great products, these Xclave boards. They're great for collaboration. You can whiteboard or you can pin up as well. They kind of attach to rails on the wall, but then you can also put them in carts and take them back to your workspace. Because we know that teams are super flexible nowadays, so you need to come together, but then you also need to take the work back with you. Not all the work is digital. So you can email the work to yourself, but then you can also kind of bring the cart back to your desk and maintain those notes from your meeting session. And these boards come in whiteboards, but also fabric, again, providing a little bit of acoustical solutions. And this one's more of a lounge type setting, so maybe 1 to 2 people just having a casual conversation, but you still have a screen and a camera if you need to connect to a remote participant. We find that these settings, in a nice, comfortable lounge chair, people feel more relaxed. It's more conversational. But there's also opportunities with the bench in the back to have more people if you need to. Again, we have acoustical panels in the back to help for sound, and we kind of keep the surroundings neutral. That helps with the video conferencing. You don't want kind of distracting patterns or colors in the back. We like to keep a neutral palette around you. It also kind of calms everyone in the room. But there is opportunities to bring color if you need branding or just to give some activity. So we bring it in like the area rugs or a little bit of pop of color in the chairs. And we try to curate that so they kind of work together. And they'll kind of pop up color in the cushion as well. This is a larger meeting room. Again, forward-facing, so we're either presenting information or you're asking for feedback from everyone. Again, we don't have a centralized table to get in the way of people interacting and move around the room. Everyone has like kind of dedicated seat. Again, it's lightweight, and the chairs are on a swivel, so it kind of activates you. You can kind of turn. I can talk to Gino. We can make eye contact. And then we can also turn back to the front of the room with the displays and the camera. And again, we're also having seats in the back that are a little taller so that everyone can kind of see over. No one's blocking views. It's also a great little perch if you're only in there for 15 or so minutes. Sure. This one actually doesn't have a camera, but
It's invisible camera.
It's invisible camera. But it would be a good kind of activity to try to figure out where the camera would be in this room, I think.
Well, there are mounting options that can actually slip between the 2 monitors, right? Now you may cover up some of the real estate from the screen, but those are the perimeters or the far edges. So yeah, I mean, I'll get into my section about eye level, right? Making sure that camera at least can capture. Since we have people in the back of the space here, we do want to bring that camera up because it's deeper, right? So that angulation is at the proper angle, so you don't have the kind of aerial view on top of someone's head, or they're not too low, right? Where you're looking up into their nostrils. So yeah, but there are mounting options that would allow us to slip the camera between those 2 screens. Absolutely.
All right. Well, okay. One thing that I really want you guys to take away with John's part was, the use case aspect. So focusing not on just, I want to deploy a room, but really taking a step back as, an IT leader and being like, what kind of action do I want, or do I need to support? What kind of use cases are being asked of my employees? And really starting from there versus, looking at like, I need X amount of huddle rooms, I need this many conference rooms. Depending on your working culture, that's going to vary drastically, and it's really going to help if you take a step back and really ask your customers, aka the employees, what they're looking for, understanding like how they work first and foremost. So, yeah.
And so part of my job is to come in to help you guys figure that out. We have a lot of workplace strategists and knowledgists that help us figure out who you guys are and how you work. And we really do want to kind of get to those nitty-gritty details so that we can deliver the right solutions. Because not everyone needs 12 huddle rooms. You might need kind of 5 large conference rooms. So everyone's needs vary. And it depends on a lot of different factors.
Yeah, and the other thing I got out was it seems like there's a lot of collaboration that happens between, especially like workplace and facilities, right? You're not only looking at the technology in the room, but the furniture and the placement, like even the color of the walls. Is it gonna translate well on video? And if you need to bring a splash of color, is it in the field of view of the camera so that it's distracting? Like all those little details really can contribute to whether you have a meh conference room and then an amazing conference room that people actually want to use every single day. So with that said, I want to kind of switch gears, and we looked at kind of the environmental aspects of the room, looking at what are the driving factors for how you should determine the technology in the room, the furniture, all of that. So let's kind of switch gears to Gino, who can talk about how do you approach your conference room technology?
Okay, it's like the Debbie Downer side of this, right? Like how do we hide the wires and cables and make technology invisible in those beautiful spaces? But one of the biggest things we believe with video is capturing the far end. And if this is the far end and I'm in that conference room, I want to make sure that environment, that culture, that color scheme, right? The relaxed nature of my business or the formality of it is transferred to the other end. Because once you start a video call, you kind of get really small, right? Now you see that other end, and we kind of lose context of what you're actually sending to the other end. This is just an example of a medium-sized space, right? I mean, the walls have no real depth on it, so we don't know how deep that room goes. But that camera placement at eye level is pretty crucial, because as it moves around, either through auto framing or the ability to do voice tracking, we want to make sure that we capture the person, right? We want to capture the audience or the group that's communicating to the far end. The use of a secondary camera used to be fairly expensive, right, with yesteryear's technology. And now it's really affordable. Zoom has a wonderful way to switch cameras through the Zoom Room controller so you can flip and give a different perspective. So if that whiteboard in the corner is something that I need to show, that camera that you see on screen is going to be hard for it to pan over to that side. So through one click, we can actually make that change. So you're kind of a producer in a sense, and once you get comfortable with the technology in the room, you should be able to produce your own meetings and send the best image possible to the other end. So eye level of camera is a key ingredient, and you brought that up for the woman out in the audience about how do I put a camera between a dual screen. That's the technology we're trying to hide, right? We're seeing a lot of new sound bars. Logitech has a Meetup product that is all self-contained except for the compute. But what do we need to do to get power out where people are going to be? That table could actually be a sofa, right? A beanbag. It could be a relaxed environment where it's not a formal table, but I do need to put my laptop down, my coffee, or I need to charge my phone. So think about where I need to bring power and data out into that workspace. It's going to be helpful for the whole organization, not just for the video conference side of it.
That's a challenge, sorry, we see as well from the Herman Miller side. We have solutions that can also run under carpet because we know that sometimes you have a floating couch or a little collaboration space that's not connected to the meeting table. So we're trying to find solutions to bring power and data to those areas. So you can kind of USB charge while you're in the meeting. You can connect wirelessly to the screen if you need to.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a larger space. Again, we're using kind of the conference room table as our kind of focal point. Audio. There are lots of audio options out there to capture the in-room participants. When I speak, microphones like directional audio, right? There are beamformers out there. There's a lot of microphone tech that will pick up our voices, but as sound reflects in a room, it creates artifacts. You can kind of hear it when I sniff my nose, right? John brought up earlier those exclave panels to be able to absorb sound. So even though your environment might be cement walls, glass wall, or cement floors, glass walls, very high ceilings, you're going to have echo. So what can we do to actually get rid of that echo or get rid of that reverberation sound so that I'm able to transmit my voice to the far end? It'll be a much better experience. Microphones like to adjust levels so that we're all heard in the room, even the soft talkers and even the loud talkers, right? So it's not blaring on the other end. So think about how can I outfit my room so I have the right kind of coverage. I might need more than you think as far as mics. You might find that one mic handles the environment in a very, very solid way for you. Then, of course, you see some speakers on that credenza there. We want sound to come from the front of the room. I remember the days of audio conferencing. If it was just us, John and I, on an audio call, we would just be staring at the phone the whole time, right? Barely looking at each other because the people we're talking to, their voices are coming from that phone. We're in a video-first culture. If someone says something on the other end, I want to be able to look up to the screen, and I want their voice to come from front of room. It's how our senses work, right? Our vision and our audio. So at least at Logitech, we're very much a forward thinker as far as forward audio, forward-facing audio, so that I can turn my attention and address the people on the other end. Any good? I think that was it on that. Actually, this slide, it's a great example that was brought up is, okay, how do I decide what size screen I need, right? And at the very end of the session, there's a design guide that will be handed out in the back of the room to help you factor through geometrics of what size monitor should go in a room that's 20 feet deep, right? Meaning the last participant on that table is 20 feet away. How big does that display need to be? Cost comes into that, right? How big a display do I actually can I afford? But a good tactic is to do dual monitor, where I can have people on one side, right, and then the content I'm trying to share on the other, as long as that content is readable, because you need to be able to understand the text that's up on the screen. That allows you now to place the vertical placement of that camera higher, and then again, back to the philosophy earlier, have multiple cameras. It's not that difficult to put them in, and Zoom makes it super easy to switch.
Yeah. Random fact, you guys probably know this, but Zoom Room supports unlimited multiple cameras. So not only can you support 2, you can have 20 if you want. Weird use case, but you technically can. So kind of keep that in mind in your larger training spaces that, you don't want everyone to look like a little tiny dot, right? You want everyone to, if they're speaking, you want to be able to switch cameras and, view different parts of your audience in larger spaces. Cool.
Absolutely. That was the short and sweet of the technology section. So
Awesome.
I figured we're going to get a lot of questions, so we thought.
Yeah, we'll leave about like 10 minutes for Q&A.
Yeah.
So, I really wanted to hit home the basics with you guys, and this is so important because I see these as the biggest factors that contribute to a horrible conference room experience. One thing before I kind of jump into that is, Gino mentioned this kind of forward-facing audio, forward-facing camera. Now, when you're driving a video-first unified communications culture, you really, really want to make sure that those audio conference rooms where everybody was looking at the middle of the table, if you guys bring video to it, how are you switching or moving or adjusting your technology so that it feels more natural, so that you're actually having a conversation? It feels like a face-to-face conversation with the remote participants versus remote participants looking at you. You're all staring at the center of the room. The camera's in a weird location, so when you're looking at the display, it doesn't even look like you're making eye contact. Keep those in mind because it really isn't a natural feeling. And if you want to be driving this, hey, it feels like we're having a natural in-person conversation, these are things that are going to need to be addressed. So think of the displays as a portal, like a window to wherever your remote participants are, right? You want to look them in the eye. You want them to feel like they're looking you in the eye. Just want to drive some natural conversational behavior, right? The other side, going back into the 2 pitfalls of a horrible conference room experience. People think, or they blame it on the technology a lot of times, but lighting is hands down, for the near end user at least, when you see yourself and you look horrible on camera, it leaves a bad kind of vibe. And so keep in mind that lighting is going to be the most important factor for video quality. You just want indirect diffuse lighting, so nothing glaring at your face, but maybe a soft light bouncing off the wall. Do you have any feedback on best practices around lighting?
Like you said, indirect lighting is great. We can always control that. If you have glazing on one side or exterior window, you can provide shades, right?
Yep.
Or kind of film covering, so you can kind of diffuse the sunlight and the light coming from those windows. So that would help greatly. Also, your distance from your lights. So you don't want the light to be too far or too close because you don't want any hot spots.
Yeah.
And again, neutral colors also help because it won't. If you have a bright red wall next to you, that's going to bounce off and kind of light your skin tones weird. So you kind of want to keep everything kind of neutral in the room.
Yeah. I like to call it Sephora lighting. So you walk in, you look good. Everywhere you go. You can take a selfie anywhere in Sephora, you're going to look bomb.
And yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are technology companies probably in this room that have the ability to compensate for light, right? But help the technology out, right? If you know that sun's coming up and it's beating into the room from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, the busiest hours of that space, do something about it, right? Because the people on the other end are going to have kind of that, I guess, the right-hand picture there,
Yeah.
the FBI.
Those
witness
were
program.
2 phone booth rooms that were taken side by side. So they're not like the exact same room, but they have very similar lighting, maybe just mirrored on the other end. And one had a brand new InDiffuse direct lighting installed, and the other didn't. And nobody uses the room on the right, but that room on the left, everyone looks so good in front of it that they're always on it for customer calls. It's 5 feet away from each other. So just kind of keep that in mind as you guys, look at your rooms, test them out. I challenge you guys, go throughout your enterprise and say, hey, is this the best, representation of me to a remote participant, to a third party?
We're constantly finding underutilized rooms in companies who need meeting spaces. So there's solutions that we can come in to retrofit these rooms very easily to make that a usable room.
Yep. All right, acoustic management. For a far end participant, this is an absolute nightmare. The reason why I bring this up is because when you're in the room, you typically can't tell that you have horrible audio. It's the person on the other side. Okay, so I just wanted to share this slide with you because I've kind of documented the common environmental, quote unquote, hazards that I find when it comes to audio. Things like tall ceilings, cement floors. Think of a meeting room experience as mostly physics, right? So when you have audio just bouncing all over the place, that's being translated over to the far end user or remote participant. And so, you talked about exclaves, the whiteboards that have a soft pad on them. It's kind of a dual function. You have padding for sound absorption, but then you can also pin up documentation, brainstorming sessions. So, you can find solutions out there that don't just serve the purpose of sound absorption. Risks include, it sounds like sometimes you're talking into a can, really, really annoying, or you're echoey, it kind of is just horrible to listen to, especially if you're in a long 1 to 2 hour meeting, right? So, look at different solutions, such as acoustic paneling, adding an area rug, that actually helps a ton, or using mic extenders to place them more strategically into where people are actually talking into, so they have better pickup. Yeah, and from a privacy standpoint, gaps under doors, make sure that we actually had this challenge where we had a conference room that people were like, this is a no-go for any private conversations. Like, you cannot have partner meetings. You can't have anything related to, earnings call preparation because there was so much sound leakage, right? So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah.
Anything to add to these? It's pretty exhaustive, yeah.
Yeah, no, I keep bringing it up. I mean, technology can only do so much, right?
Yeah.
And if we can help it through these treatments, you'll have a wonderful experience. I mean, audio is really the driver. Without audio, a meeting just doesn't happen, right? If it's video. We've all been through that, right? The struggles of just waiting for the audio to get better, and then we just call it off if it doesn't work, right? Even though the video's there.
I've heard from our end users, or just end users in general, that they would rather have bad video than bad audio. So yeah, I see a lot of nodding heads in here, so you guys know. This is an example of the exclaves that we brought up earlier, so just putting it back up again. Once again, dual purpose.
And it could be an easy solution to bring in to a meeting room that's existing, right? We can just
Yeah.
install these rails and boards. And a lot of these solutions can be retrofitted to existing conference rooms. I think that's
Yeah.
key.
I got to say too, the boards that are magnetically attached to one another, so I can actually, John B brought it up, lift it up and take it with me if I get kicked out of the room. And if the next room has it, I just put it in that room.
Yeah, it's
So
lightweight.
you're taking acoustic treatment from room to room, which is a good thing.
Yep.
So,
Awesome. And here's actually an example of one of our rooms at Zoom HQ, just down the street. And we have these awesome, like our workplace manager did a great job incorporating decoration and design with functional kind of, I like to call it art, it's functional art. They're acoustic tiles, she puts them behind the TV because we had a lot of bounce back from, the sound coming out of the display. And then she made sure to have soft furniture that was sound absorbing. So a lot of things that you can work with your facilities and workplace managers on when it comes to interior design. So I wanted to end on this, make sure you guys had a chance to just kind of glance through it, see if any of these elements look familiar for your workplace. And yeah, just know that you don't have to rip and replace. There are solutions that can be retrofitted into your existing environments. But yeah, thanks. And we do have 2 microphones up here if anybody has any questions. You guys can walk up and, yeah. Okay, question in the back. And by the way, we have the mission control. If you guys have any questions, Logitech has a booth here as well. So you guys can also find us on the show floor.
Yes, I had a question for you related to audio transport and where you think that the difference is between going traditional USB over to networked audio and where you make that transition.
from Logitech's perspective, the USB is the protocol in which our devices connect into the compute platform for it to then go through its processing. At Logitech, we have our own DSP, if you will, right? Our processor that handles that audio, that listens for the far end audio coming through the speakers and doesn't replicate that through the microphones. So your question's fairly technical in a sense that we're neutral. We would rather control that audio processing internally and not hand it off to a different software environment for its processing, only in that most of our systems, as you know, come all-inclusive, right? From Meetup all the way up to Rally. That's one domain that we can fully control. We do go through a pretty exhaustive whitelisting process with Zoom to make sure it's qualified so that that audio can be transferred off. You might be referring to Dante or some of the other protocols, right, that transmit that. It's all wonderful technology. I think in this session, for sure, we want to make sure that no matter what the microphone source is, we're helping it out, right, by reducing artifacts. And let's allow our human voices that the mics have been trained on to know about can be transmitted. So, good question, though.
For John, what are your thoughts or solutions behind managing HVAC noise? We have several conference rooms where we have air vents that are just not ideally placed. And while the Zoom software does a great job of managing background noise, it does create a disjointed experience.
Right. There should be some, you can, I think, retrofit it with ducts with sound dampeners. So they're at the source of the duct. And if your ducts are up high, you can also install like ceiling baffles, so kind of floating sound baffles that kind of help bounce that sound away. Those could be easily attached to the ceiling grid. So those would be 2 things I would recommend.
Ceiling baffles have been really popular. I've heard that.
Yeah.
And they're also gorgeous.
Yeah, so
So
they can be
great.
structural, sculptural, and
Yeah.
artfully done. There's flat panels, and there are also ones that are more kind of 3D. The 3D ones
Yeah.
might help you kind of capture the sound above from the HVAC.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'd only caution that sometimes they'll think it's ductwork and it's really a VAV or something like that, so you sometimes need to get mechanical involved. The only thing I would add to your shades comment is oftentimes we find that people overlook the fact that their 1% shades versus 5% shades have a huge NRC delta. And so you may want to expand upon the fact that when you're looking at a shade, aesthetics is one thing, sound absorption, it's a tenfold difference. It's a huge difference. And then secondly, one of the things you mentioned during your presentation for the Logitech was, hey, if you've got a deeper room, add a second display. It's literally one of the biggest misnomers that we go out as integrators and try to fix is that perception. So hearing it with a bunch of potentially end users, please, I mean, ultimately, yes, distance to the furthest viewer is what dictates how much height you need. Moving the video over to the other side may help, but that's clearly the wrong approach, is to put a second display up. Zoom plays a critical role in terms of supplemental displays in the long room. And the other thing is, it's not just the last chair, it's the first chair. OSHA says you can't go more than 30 degrees from the first chair to the top of the screen. That places inherent limits on the room when it's properly designed. So you might want to just expand upon that and clarify that.
Now?
Yeah,
I'd be
I
happy
think,
to. Well,
so,
yeah, maybe we
you
can.
wanna go?
Well, no, I mean, price comes into the factor, and then we talk about duplication of displays in the room to amplify or to produce that environment either in the back space of the room. So that way now I'm looking over here while someone's presenting on the far end, I'm looking at their content, but now I've lost my eye contact. As the displays get bigger, now all of a sudden camera placement becomes an issue, right? The camera now becomes very high, but as you move further back into the back of the room, it's not as noticeable unless I'm a front row seater and I'm right there and I'm looking up. So thank gosh we have AV integrators to kind of direct us when we get down to the actual installation of these spaces, because they're going to pick out the right equipment and the right placement to achieve all of our goals. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line is the size of the display is going to be, there's going to be a correlation based on the size and distance from the furthest speaker, right? How tight that correlation is going to be up to all the different factors that go into your conference room, the furniture that you have, the use case for that room. So it's really up to you guys to ask those questions and look up, the documentation that's provided. There's a lot of great resources on the Zoom page for display sizes that we recommend for different room types, but also the design guide that Logitech's providing. So you're right, it is not like, comprehensive. We're not saying X equals this when it comes to room size and display size, but there is definitely a correlation. Yeah.
Yes, just to clarify, my point wasn't that bigger size, yes, we're clearly looking at that.
Yeah.
My point was that oftentimes end users will say, well, just add another display to the side of it. If my vertical height hasn't changed any, no matter how many displays I have in that front wall, my furthest viewer can't see any better. That's the misconception that
Totally, and I think we're all in agreement with that. So thanks for bringing that up. It's definitely very important to look at the whole picture. Anything else?
No, that was
Okay.
well summed.
So my organization is going through this fad of rising and lowering conference room tables right now, which makes it very difficult to have the camera at table height or even under the display. So I was just curious if you guys had any recommendations of camera placement when the target can drop or raise about 3 feet.
Going from kind of table height to bar height, is that the?
So basically, standing to sitting height, basically.
Does the chair adjust with the desk? No.
They do actually.
Hydro, power, self-adjustment.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. I haven't seen that one yet, or at least that, I think you'd probably have to find a happy medium of the proper placement based on the mobility of those chairs and those desks, right?
Yeah, I'm almost thinking maybe like with the not the rally, the meetup, just having the camera on the edge of the table, so it goes up and down with it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, if that comes if the table butts up close to the monitors and whatnot. I mean, ideally we want it to be at least at eye level, right? That's the goal. So when I look, I'm looking into your eyes as if we're sitting here together, right? So let me think on that one. That's a good one.
I mean, let's talk afterwards. I want to see photos. I want
Yeah.
to see what's going on. And I'd love to get our PSO team involved. They're going to have a lot of, I'm sure they're going to be super interested. Yeah.
Oh, I swear they have a line over here too.
I'm sorry. Here.
No problem. Something we've come into some trouble with is teaching our end users to be really aware of the physical space, right? Our conference rooms are changing, knowing that we can use shades and lighting, having them actually go and know to close those shades to improve acoustics. Talk to us a little bit about how you train and teach and adjust those behaviors or make them aware of those behaviors.
Right, that is a big issue when technologies are always changing and we oftentimes don't keep up with it. I mean, sometimes we start off like with a good example is whiteboard wall. Whiteboard paint was a new invention, and we just sort of had like fun little stickers, be like, hey, you can write on this wall, right? So maybe it's just a quick little call out that you have for the first few months of that room. Be like, hey, You know, these shades can come down with the push of this button, right? And then eventually people start catching on, right? There's also automation software that can lower shades and close windows at different times of day when the sun's the strongest or the brightest.
Yeah, I was going to elaborate. I think in all the keynote, we saw some room control, right? The stage was doing a bunch of crazy lights and whatnot. So that control automation, right, in the Zoom room controller now is a reality. So if I have programming on the back end that allows those shades to be closed at certain times of day, I can automate that, or I can simply bring up the interface to make that happen.
Yeah, and we have a session specifically on native room control integration, I think tomorrow. So you guys should keep an eye out for that if that's something you're interested in. Cool.
So all of the cool room designs that you showed at the beginning of your presentation, with the increased square footage cost of corporate real estate, how much adoption are you really seeing of this low density, huge recreational style conference space versus a more standard footprint? Is that really, I mean, from a design aesthetic, it's very cool, but are you really seeing corporations adopt that with the cost involved?
Oh, for
No,
both of
I'm
us?
just-
Yeah, it's a good question.
You had tables.
Yeah.
I mean,
So I'm just
Yeah, I
curious.
know.
It depends. I mean, I feel like we don't deliver just one solution for the end user. We have 4 or 5, right? And it depends on your culture and the way that you work. So sometimes those big kind of war room meeting rooms are relevant for a specific culture and the way that they work, but oftentimes they aren't. And then we have to kind of cut those rooms in half or
I was
quarter
just
them,
curious
right?
if that's a trend that you guys are seeing. Is that a trend you guys are trying to push? I mean, where?
We don't, I mean, me specifically, I don't try to push trends because I react to who you guys are and what you guys need.
Okay.
But yeah.
From
That's it.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is what I've seen a lot of customers adopting is this kind of setup that is not just communication but also very collaborative, right? So if I were to say kind of an underlying trend that is being very widely adopted is this kind of blurring of the lines of bringing in the tools but also making sure like analog whiteboards that remote participants are able to interact with that as well. So, Zoom Rooms for Touch is a great example. You can also bring in a secondary camera. So yeah, kind of like what John's saying, it isn't one size fits all, but there is this underlying trend of collaboration meets communication.
Zoom has developed a wonderful technology of 3 displays. You see a continuous presence, you see an active speaker, and you see content. So none of the designs that we have shown actually incorporate that. In fact, that's dramatically different from what's there from Poly or Cisco or for that matter, anybody else. So if you have to make a Zoom room, my recommendation to everyone is you must have 3 displays. And you have multiple configurations possible. One configuration is that you have 2 displays in the front and you have content on the table in terms of content monitors, or you have 3 displays in the front. So I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that 3 displays are the way going forward. We should not be making video conference rooms like the way Poly and Cisco made. So if Zoom has done this 3-screen, that's the way to go.
Yeah, and some people bring in triple screens for their huddle rooms. Some people don't like it, even just because it's just too much screen for a 4-person room. So it really comes down to like, yes, we can support it, and is this a need for your space? Do you have the budget for it? There are a lot of different factors that can contribute to someone choosing 1 screen versus 3 screens. So I'm glad you brought that up, but yeah, it really comes down to what the customer actually needs.
Actually, the second thing is the content is the king in the video collaboration. So if you keep just seeing the faces of others and can't see the content properly, so it defeats the whole purpose of video collaboration. So for content, we have to see content separately and video separately. So 2 screens are a must for any room more than 4 or 6. And there is a simple formula just for the group that you take the display size in diagonal and multiply it by 2.25 times. That's the maximum distance that you can be sitting away. So the whole lot of rooms that were shown out here with twin displays, they will not even cover the 50% of the room. So the rest of the people would be in complete darkness. What's the content being shown? So the simplest way to go about is that you put content monitors on the table. And these content monitors are small monitors, 15-inch, 16-inch, 17-inch. They can be motorized, non-motorized. So there are multiple kind of content monitors available.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this outside, but anytime you add another monitor, it's extra cost. It's extra cabling that you have to, take into consideration. So there's a lot. I mean, it's not as easy as just like, let's just throw up another monitor all the time. But I do agree. Like, there's the way to support 3 displays, and I love that you're getting creative around it. That's really cool. It's kind of the Zoom philosophy, is we didn't want to be that conventional conference room solution. We wanted you to have the flexibility to have these really creative deployments. So thanks.
So being responsible for technology, I take functionality over aesthetics in a room all day long. John is being the designer, you want aesthetics. Aesthetics wins 99% of the time, right? So we have this beautiful conference room, and the technology works like crap,
Wait,
right?
I want to stop you there. That wasn't. Yeah. Do you want to?
No.
Okay,
Let me
okay.
finish.
I can be
All right.
like,
So,
Sorry.
and this isn't coming to you. How do you, in your profession, bridge that gap, right? To make it so my technology, my functionality works with your awesome design and aesthetic. Because in my organization, I don't win, and then when something doesn't work, it's always my fault, right? And also my asset manager's fault. Like, why isn't this working? It's really, really pretty. Well, you didn't want me to put a camera where you could see it, or we can't run stuff under the carpet. So I've struggled trying to, bridge that gap.
and I've had the same failures where the furniture in the room doesn't work, right? It's like, why do I have a seated height desk, but it's a standing height kind of room situation? So it all comes down to, I think, communication. So we need to be talking together and working together. That's why we have this partnership with Logitech, so that we can come up with the best solutions, right? So that both fits your function and also your budget, because those are 2 big realities that we come up against. So
I want to add to that. If you rewind the whole process, right, of facility design, of architect, I mean, how far back do you go into those decisions that are being made before you have to address these spaces, right? To see these ideas of, look, this is the direction we're taking from a communication standpoint. This is what I need to put in the space. I need to work with you, as opposed to dealing with kind of the aftermath, right?
Yeah. No, and I'm lucky in my role. I get to be involved in the start of the design program, right? Because I work closely with our facilities team, all that stuff, right? So I get to be involved with it. But again, it's almost like I'm fighting a losing battle, right? So,
And probably you're dealing with lots, right? I think a lot of people in these rooms are dealing with a lot of spaces. So there's a standard cut. This is what's going to happen. I want that user experience to be the same no matter where they go, right? And that cost sacrifices, this flexibility in these spaces, right? And then we look at, from persona of, startup companies, whatnot, they're trying to attract talent. They want that same environment in their coffee shop that they've been working out of. It's a constant balance, and thanks for fighting a good fight.
I want to address that with one thing, because I've been in the exact same position, actually on the inverse. And what works is, so that slide that I had with this is great lighting and this is horrible lighting? That was a battle for like 6 months. Nobody believed me. And then I was like, you know what, screw it. And I flew out to Denver and I straight up took a picture. That was me. That was the actual photo I sent. I was like, this is what it looks like in this room, and this is what it looks like in this room. A week later, it was fixed. So I think when they actually see it for themselves, they're like, oh yeah, it does suck, Yeah. So, get a camera, kind of show them, hey, this is what it could be.
But a lot of times that's an expensive remediation when you've already made those choices.
Yeah, when you've already made those choices. So it's better to get ahead of it, you're right. All right, we have time for one more question.
Yes, and to kind of throw a wrench in everything, what if you are more mobile? I have tons of instructors at different cities and all around the nation, world actually. But if I'm setting up, I've actually set up their Zoom setup, I guess. It's not even a room, it's just their closet or whatever, from Zoom, so on a phone. I see a lot of elbows. But something like that, what would you say are the most distinct challenges if I'm setting up pop-up Zoom rooms, essentially?
that's a good question, because we see increase in remote workers and distributed campuses. So I'm having a meeting from my office at home or my bedroom at home. So like what are the solutions?
There's some parameters around what is the background you're on. We saw some great background technology, right, which is going to solve a lot of that distraction and whatnot.
And I think it has to go kind of what you were saying is like fighting that fight of what is acceptable quality for being in a closet or a bathroom or something like that. Well, not a bathroom, but the sound.
If your bathroom has nice lighting.
See, I took a lesson.
Hey, you could if you wanted to,
Yeah.
with a Zoom room. Just saying.
But, and then also, what would you suggest, anything for if we have people on moving vehicles? We've had people like on campaign buses, on, 18-wheeler trucks, stuff like that.
Okay, so I have 2 customers that come to mind that have had amazing deployments, and we could talk about this later, but Copart is a company that had mobile trailers outfitted with Zoom rooms, and we also have a someone from Texas A&M University, Jocelyn Widmer, who's going to be talking at a session called Pushing the Limits of Zoom Rooms. And she's actually in the phases of scoping out the technology for a mobile Zoom Rooms school bus.
I did not mean that plug because I am from the school.
You're from?
I did not mean it as a plug.
Oh, funny. Yeah, so there are ways to do it. We have customers that have done it and are very happy with it. And there's a session. So if you want to get more information, we can sync up afterwards. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody, for hanging in with us.